But when it comes to Dylan Raiola, how will things change in terms of the hype when spring ball actually begins, in your opinion, Sean?
Yeah, I think it will take a good week or two in the spring ball, but I think basketball has given us a nice distraction to even, usually this time of year we're talking a lot of spring football. They're also starting spring football a lot later, it feels like, than we've seen. We've seen spring ball start as early as late February here over the years, and now it's almost going to go into early April. I mean, I think March 24th, the first day, that first week. But there's going to be a lot of excitement. I think just seeing him on the field, seeing him throw the football. I mean, there's 23 newcomers that are going to be here for spring practice total when you count the early enrollees that they've added from transfers and high school players that will be here for spring practice.
Wait a second. I want to drill down on that. 23 new, we'll call them new players, new additions to the roster will be in spring ball. Is there a list somewhere of that, Sean?
Well, we've had it several times on Husker Online.
Great, I missed that.
I think I've published it 8 times. There's. Thanks for reading, by the way. There's 16 high school players, 6 transfers, and then there's 1 walk-on that got here early too. So it's about as big of a number as you're going to see. I mean, that's a lot of 22 of those guys are scholarship players they've added, which is about 60% or so of the total scholarship players they'll bring in here to the team.
Sean, we're going to say 22 scholarship players in the spring, newcomers, we're going to say. That is by far the biggest number. What would be the closest that you can remember in your 25 or 20 years?
I would guess in the 10 to 15 range. It's not something you could go back but the transfer portal thing has added another layer to this because those guys, there's such an urgency to get out in December for those kids to find a new home in January. And they've got 6 of those guys here too. So, I mean, that's a good number on that front too, because you can bring transfers in the summer, but it's a lot harder for those guys to have the impact because they're getting there so much later. But to have, Dowdell and to have Nayor and Banks, Stephon Thompson, Bly Hill, that group of players here already. I mean, that's also a big bonus, I think.
Sean, you also wrote about, and I did happen to see this on Husker Online, Brian Ferentz was in town.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, Brian Ferentz was in town last week. What was that all about as you talk to people?
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting deal. It was last Monday. He was up there, touring the facilities and talking to some people. And it's my understanding it was nothing more than that. It was just kind of a stop-by visit. And I think when you're out of coaching, for a year or how long, I mean, that's common. You see guys go around and talk and meet with friends and meet with people. But I didn't get the impression that there was, this was like a job interview or anything like that. And that would be an interesting situation. Obviously you're bringing the son of your chief rival in your building to kind of look around. But yeah, it got my attention. There's no doubt that he was up there, but I don't think there was anything more to it than that.
Joined by Sean Callahan. Sean, you guys talked to Tony White last week, and I'm curious. You wrote that he seems more motivated than ever. Why do you say that? What made you take that away from that conversation?
Oh, just the way he said that we get ready to start the interview and said, hopefully you've been able to catch your breath and relax a little bit here in the dead period. He was fired up because he just got done watching some third down defenses. And, I think he's quick to point out they were far from perfect. I mean, yeah, they had good numbers, improved numbers, but the way the Big Ten plays offense, every defense had good numbers in the league because there's this offensive styles are different. The key are the situational downs, and they gave up some big moments in situational downs against Iowa, against Wisconsin, and some of the other key games in the month of November that they had a chance to possibly close out if they would have got that stop. That really would have mattered. And, I think those are the moments that drive him now this offseason.
Yeah, they were 11th nationally in total defense and 7th in yards allowed per play, but 45th in opponent third down percentage. And they did not get off. I mean, I would say that a lot. They didn't get off the field against Wisconsin. They could have shut Wisconsin down and won that game. And they didn't time and again, Wisconsin was converting third downs. Iowa converted big late in that game. So, yeah, there's a lot that they can look at that would, produce confidence, but there's enough that they can look at that they would say, okay, we can get a lot better. What else did you take away from that interview? You asked him the question, what did he learn about the Big Ten? Do you remember his answer? I do.
Yeah, the size of the linemen, the physicality, the length.
Yeah. Size.
They're just grown men. I mean, the defensive fronts and the offensive linemen in this league across the board. I mean, it's one of the best, if not the best, in college football, and it's only going to get better with the way teams come at you and teams still run downhill at you. But yet you still have to be prepared for spread too. I mean, it's such a unique league. You can't really call it obviously a regional league. I mean, it's a coast to coast league, and you're going to have to, pack your suitcase accordingly each week, depending on who and where you're playing. I mean, the game in LA on November 15th is going to be a lot different than a game being played in Minneapolis or, Madison, Wisconsin in November. So I think that's what's unique about this league now is, you can't just build your offense or defense one way now because of just how different this league is from the type of coaches, the type of styles of offense, the climate changes, you name it across the board.
Joined by Sean Callahan. Sean, switching to basketball, you've watched a lot of hoops this year. You've been to a lot of games in Nebraska, obviously trending right now at this moment toward the NCAA tournament. Based on what you've seen, is this the team that can win their first ever tournament game in school history?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think if you get into the tournament between a 7 and a 10 seed, those are coin flip games. I mean, the 7-10 is pretty dang close to an 8-9 game when you look at the metrics. I mean, it's a 50-50 game for the most part. So that's today what it feels like we're looking at right now. And even when they were in the 6-11 game 10 years ago against Baylor, I didn't go to San Antonio with Robin for that game, but I felt like they could win that game. I mean, they had a chance to, and then Baylor was good. I mean, Baylor ended up beating Creighton the next game, if I'm not mistaken, in San Antonio there, and that was a Creighton team that had, I believe, Doug McDermott.
Yep, you're right.
So, that was a good Baylor team they lost to the last time they played in the tournament. But yeah, they're a tough team, and what intrigues me, Jake, about the tournament is, you're going to play teams that haven't played you before. They, these Big Ten teams know how to guard Tominaga, and they know how to kind of handle some of Fred Hoiberg's sets and things that he does. Just the thought of kind of playing a fresh new opponent that's never played Nebraska. I'm excited just to kind of see what some of these shooters and the style of play that Fred plays will look like in kind of a neutral site environment.
Take yourself back, Sean. And this isn't really a question as much as a comment. This team's way better than 2014, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that team.
Headaway, Shields, team, Webster, Rivers.
They just got hot. I mean, they were making shots that weren't even like high percentage. I remember like Petaway would like pull away on threes or pull away on a fast break and just stop and shoot a three. Just like, and they were making all those shots during that run. Pitchford, I mean, he was just throwing them up and they were going in. I mean, and then the next year he wasn't quite as good, but they just got hot. I mean, I think that was the first year you realized how big of an advantage Pinnacle Bank Arena was going to be for Nebraska. And we're seeing that now 10 years later, that arena, when this team is good, is as tough to play as anywhere in the country. But you're right. I mean, I think this team is deeper too. I think that's the difference, guys, is they can come at you with another wave of bodies. Where some of Tim Miles' better teams, the two particular, they always had 5 or 6 good players, but it dropped off pretty significantly. I mean, they were playing Johnny Trueblood on a team down the stretch late, and he was a guy that like left the team and came back, and he was playing significant minutes in the NIT.
That's right.
Regarding Fred Hoiberg, Sean, I mean, Matt Painter's had a great year at Purdue, obviously the 1 seed, deservedly so in the conference, but should Fred Hoiberg be the Big Ten coach of the year when all is said and done?
Yeah, I think he should. I mean, I guess a lot's going to depend on what others think of Matt Painter, but the fact that Purdue has won this league already outright, I mean, that's quite of an accomplishment to win on the road at the level they have. No one else is doing that in this conference. So that's impressive. But they also have the best team. They're also a preseason number 1 level team, and they've kind of held serve. So I think a lot of it is, how do you gauge the coach of the year? I'll use a football analogy. Do you give it to the Ryan Day, Jim Harbaugh guy because they went 12-0, 11-1, but they probably should have? Or do you give it to a guy like David Braun who, overachieved and got the most out of his team? I mean, it's a similar kind of question there when you look at a Fred Hoiberg, Matt Painter discussion, because Nebraska, if I'm not mistaken, was picked 12th out of 14th going into the season, if memory serves me correct.
That's
and so
right.
to get this team, to where they're possibly going to be the 3 seed, I mean, that's an unbelievable year-over-year jump.
Sean, good stuff as always. Thanks for the time. We'll chat with you again next week.
All right. Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
That's Husker Online Sean Callahan.